There's a powerful lesson in this story, one that just might change the way you see things. So please watch it till the end. Don't scroll away. Don't leave without subscribing. We need your support to grow and keep sharing life-changing stories like this. I'm begging you, hit that subscribe button right now. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts. The air smelled like burning rubber and dust, and silence hung heavy except for the quiet sobs of survivors. But before we get to that moment, let me take you back to where it all started. It was in a small town called Otuoke, deep inside Bayelsa State. That's where the main character of this story comes from. Her name is Ebier Briggs. She was 24, smart, soft-spoken, and the only daughter of her parents. Her dream was to become a lawyer and make her mother proud. Her father had passed when she was just a baby, and her mom raised her with love and prayer. Ebier had just completed her NYSC orientation in Osun State, and she was full of joy because she was posted to a law firm in Abuja for her primary assignment. She was so excited, like really excited. She had never been to Abuja before. Her plan was to make connections, learn fast, and maybe even stay there after NYSC. So, on that fateful Sunday morning, 19 NYSC Corps members, including Ebier, entered a chartered bus headed from Osun to Abuja. The driver, Mr. Kazim, was a friendly man with a big belly and loud voice. "Oya, oya, make una fasta beg. I no day drive for night," he shouted playfully. There was laughter, music, and chatter. Everyone was wearing their white NYSC shirts and khaki trousers. Some were on their phones, some were chewing groundnuts, and others were just happy to be done with camp. But something strange happened before they left. One elderly cleaner, Mama Isiaka, who always swept the camp's main hall, came close to the bus and said, "Children, please pray. Pray well before you go. That road, pray-o." Ebier heard her clearly. She was standing close to the door, and she even paused for a second. Her mother had always told her, never travel without prayer, even if it's a short journey. But in that moment, she just smiled politely and entered the bus. After all, she had already prayed that morning, right? "Driver, let's go abeg. Time to go," shouted one of the guys at the back. And just like that, they zoomed off. No group prayer, no moment of silence, no thought for anything spiritual. They didn't know. They had just offended something sacred. Now, somewhere between Ibadan and Oyo, the bus had to stop. One of the corpers, a guy called Boma, begged the driver to stop at a roadside market. "Abeg, I want buy suya and soft drink." A few others jumped down too, laughing, joking. It was a dusty area with local sellers, meat stands, and kids begging for alms. But what none of them knew was that just beyond that market, something was missing. The royal crown of Oba Adalaja, the king of that local town, had been stolen that very morning. It was a sacred crown, old, gold-plated, and passed down for generations. Without it, the king couldn't hold meetings, couldn't perform rituals, couldn't even eat his evening meal. And as they were driving off again, something clinked in one of the bags at the back of the bus. "Wetin be that sound?" The driver muttered to himself. Ebier turned her head slowly. Something didn't feel right, like a weight was hanging in the air. The bus picked up speed. Music blasted again, they laughed again. But this time, the air felt strange. The skies darkened a little. Birds flew off in a flock. And the road ahead? It started twisting in the most confusing way, like the tarmac was no longer straight. That's when it began. First, a sharp bend that wasn't there before. Then a shout from the front seat. "Driver, brake! Brake! Ooh!" Screams. Tires screeching. Dust flying. Jesus! The bus hit something hard, flipped once, twice, and then blackout. Everything went silent. Only the distant cry of goats in the bush and the soft wind. "My head. Oh, my head." Ebier's voice trembled as her eyes fluttered open. At first, she couldn't tell where she was. All she could hear was the faint crackling of fire and someone crying softly nearby. Then the pain hit her, sharp, hot pain in her shoulder and a dull ache in her head. She tried to sit up but couldn't. Her left leg was pinned under a seat. The metal frame of the bus was twisted like a crushed sardine can. Glass was everywhere. Blood was on her shirt. She blinked again, and that's when she saw them. Bodies. Motionless, some hanging halfway out the broken windows, others slumped over their seats. One guy, she didn't even recognize his name, was laying close to the front, his NYSC cap soaked in red. A few meters away, someone was shouting, "Help! Somebody help! Oh God! God abego!" It was Chioma, one of the girls who used to be so bubbly back in camp. She was limping, her arm clearly broken, her voice hoarse from screaming. Another guy, Ibrahim, was crawling on his elbows trying to pull someone out from under a chair. His own face was bruised, blood dripping from his nose. "Wake up! Please wake up!" he kept shouting. But the body wasn't moving. Ibir finally forced herself to sit up, gritting her teeth as pain shot through her leg. She looked around again, counted 8 people moving. The rest were quiet. Too quiet. The bus had rolled off the road and landed in a shallow valley. Tall grasses surrounded them, and in the distance, villagers were beginning to run down the slope after hearing the crash. But even in her pain and shock, Ibir remembered something. That sound. That clink. Back in the bus, just before the crash, she dragged her injured leg and crawled to the back of the wreckage. There was a bag there, torn slightly, but still zipped. It wasn't hers. She opened it slowly, her hands shaking. Inside, clothes, snacks, power bank, and then a crown. No, not just any crown. It was gold-plated, covered in red beads. Ancient, dusty, but shining under the evening sun like it had power in it. Ebir gasped and dropped it immediately. "What is this doing here?" she whispered. Then she heard a voice behind her. "You see Am too?" It was Tunde. He was bleeding from the mouth, holding his side. He looked terrified. "I saw it earlier. At the market, Boma bought something from those boys selling old things. I didn't know it was a crown until now." Ebir's breath caught in her throat. "He stole it?" Tunde nodded slowly. "He said it was just a souvenir, something he'd take back to Abuja. He thought it was fake." Ebir didn't know what to say. Her eyes filled with tears. "People are dying, Tunde, because of this." He didn't answer. Instead, he sat down beside her, his face pale. And then the villagers arrived. They rushed in, pulling bodies, helping the living, shouting instructions in Yoruba and Pidgin. Phones were out, someone was recording, others were calling ambulances. But one old man, his eyes sharp, his steps firm, walked straight to where Ebir sat. He didn't ask questions. He looked at the crown on the ground, picked it up gently, and sighed. "It is done," he said. The villagers around him gasped. "Na the Oba crown be that? Ah, na dem carry am. See, wet and dawn happened because of that thing." The tension was real. Ebir felt eyes on her. Suspicion. Anger. Grief. No, I didn't steal it. I swear it was in someone else's bag," she tried to explain. But it didn't matter. What mattered was people were dead, and the crown was found on their bus. By the time the police came, they were already asking questions. Who took it? Who knew about it? Who packed that bag? Ambulances started arriving, picking up the injured, covering the dead. Some of the Corps members had lost arms. Others, like Boma, didn't survive the crash. Ebir, weak and in tears, was placed on a stretcher. As they lifted her into the ambulance, she looked out through the cracked window at the villagers staring back at her. She felt the weight of the day pressed down on her chest. It was supposed to be just a journey, just a transfer from one state to another. But now she was in the middle of a story that would shake the country. By nightfall, the news was everywhere. 19 NYSC members involved in tragic bus crash, royal crown discovered in wreckage. Was it an accident or a curse? Abir lay in her hospital bed, unable to sleep. She kept hearing that woman's voice in her head. "Children, please pray before you go. That road, prayo." And now it was too late. "Can you hear me?" The voice was soft, distant, but familiar. She blinked slowly, eyes heavy like stones. Her surroundings were bright. Too bright. White walls, beeping machines, the faint smell of antiseptic. A hospital. Her mother was sitting beside the bed, holding her hand tightly, eyes swollen from crying. "Mummy," Ibir whispered, her throat dry and sore. Her mother nodded quickly, choking back tears. "Yes, my daughter, I'm here. I came as soon as I heard. Thank God you're alive." Ibir tried to sit up, but winced in pain. Her ribs ached, her leg was bandaged, and her head felt like someone had slammed a hammer into it. The memories came rushing back. The crash, the bodies, the blood, the crown. Her heart raced as she remembered that glittering object tucked inside the bag and how it changed everything. Where's the crown?" she asked suddenly. Her mother looked confused. "Crown? What crown?" Ibir stared at the ceiling. It was all too much. She didn't even know how to explain. How do you tell your mother that someone on your bus stole a royal crown and now people are dead? That same day, the police came to her room. 2 officers. One wearing a plain shirt, the other in uniform. Miss Briggs, we're investigating the incident. We need your full cooperation, one of them said, flipping open a small notepad. I told the other officer already, I found the crown in someone else's bag. It wasn't mine. I didn't even touch it until after the crash, she said, voice trembling. Who owned the bag? The officer asked. She hesitated. Boma, I think it was Boma. The officer wrote that down slowly. He's one of the deceased. Ibir looked away. A sharp wave of guilt washed over her. Boma was loud and reckless, yes, but he didn't deserve to die like that. The officers asked a few more questions, thanked her, and left. But Ebir could tell this wasn't going to end soon. Later that evening, her phone buzzed. Messages, missed calls, voice notes. One of the voice notes was from Shioma, the girl who'd been screaming after the crash. Ibir, they said the king wants justice. They're not happy we had the crown. They're calling it a curse. Some people say this crash is a warning. Another one came from Tunde. Be careful, Ebi. The news is spreading. Some people are blaming all of us. The villagers think we disrespected their king, even though most of us didn't even know about it. She couldn't sleep that night. Her mind kept replaying that moment when Mama Isiaka told them to pray, and they laughed it off. The next morning, journalists came, then NYSC officials, then lawyers. It was chaos. But the worst part? Families of the dead were demanding answers. One woman, her face twisted with pain, pointed at the survivors sitting in the waiting room and shouted, "My son went to serve his country, and now he's in the ground because of some foolishness? Because you people stole a king's crown?" The room fell silent. No one knew what to say. Tunde stood up slowly, tried to explain. We didn't all know, it was just one person. But the mother screamed again. And none of you stopped him? Tears were flowing freely now. The weight of guilt was like a shadow that refused to leave. Soon the Oba's palace sent a statement. It was firm but calm. We do not wish for further blood, but justice must be served. The sacred crown was stolen, and it brought shame and tragedy. Let this be a warning to all who dishonor tradition. The land speaks when it is disrespected. Social media caught fire. Cursed crown, pray before you travel, NYSC tragedy. Everyone had opinions. Some blamed the Oba, some blamed NYSC, some blamed the corpers themselves. And Abir was stuck in the middle. She didn't leave her hospital bed for days. She stopped responding to messages. She watched the funeral of Boma on TV. His mother collapsed beside his coffin. It broke her completely. The pressure became so much that she started shaking whenever someone opened the door. She was scared the police would come again, scared the villagers would demand more. But then, something even more terrifying happened. Tunde went missing. One of the only other survivors who knew the full story. Gone. The last message he sent to the group chat was, "Guys, something's off. I think someone is following me. I saw a man standing near my gate last night, just watching." No one had heard from him since. Ebir sat on her hospital bed, her hand over her chest, trying to steady her breathing. She realized something horrifying. "Where's Tunde?" Ebir's voice cracked as she gripped her phone tighter. It was past midnight. She had called him 5 times, sent over a dozen texts, and left voicemails. No response. She sat up in her hospital bed, breathing fast, her bandaged leg throbbing under the sheets. Her instincts screamed at her. Something was very wrong. She opened the group chat of the NYSC survivors. Messages were flying in. "Chioma, has anyone heard from Tunde? It's been 3 days. I'm scared. Guys, we need to report this to the police officially. His family says he hasn't come home. Abego, this thing Don Day looks spiritual. I don't pack go back my village. Make dem no use me do example." The room was quiet except for the low humming of the hospital fan and the distant cough of another patient. But inside Ebir, it was like thunder was rolling. She remembered the day before the crash. Tunde had warned Boma, told him not to buy anything from those street boys at the village market. But Boma had laughed it off, saying, "Omo, not just old decoration. I fit use am do skit." That night, Ebir begged her doctor to discharge her early. "Please, I can't stay here anymore. I'm feeling better. I need to leave." The doctor hesitated. "You still need rest. You're healing." "I'll rest at home." By the next morning, she was out. Her mother had come to pick her up. But instead of going straight home, Ebir insisted on one thing first. "We have to go to Tunde's house." His apartment was in a quiet area of town, normally peaceful. But today, it was crawling with tension. His front door was slightly open. They pushed it gently. The sitting room was in disarray. Couch cushions scattered, a glass of water spilled on the floor. His laptop was still on the table, blinking. His phone on the floor with a cracked screen. Ibir gasped and stepped back. Something happened here. Her mother pulled her outside immediately and called the police. Within minutes, they arrived, but even they seemed cautious. "Madam, you said your friend went missing after the crash?" the officer asked. Ibir nodded. The officer looked around, sighed, and said something that sent chills down her spine. "You're not the first person we've heard this from. What do you mean?" Another NYSC survivor from a different crash last year. Same thing. An object was stolen from a traditional site. Bus crash. Some survived. One of them went missing weeks later. We never found her. Abir's mouth fell open. "This is a pattern?" The officer looked at her with tired eyes. "You need to be careful." She left the house with her heart in her throat. The next day, Chioma posted a video on Instagram. Her eyes were red. She hadn't slept. Her voice was shaky. "My name is Chioma. I survived the bus crash that killed most of my batch members, and I'm not hiding anymore. We didn't steal that crown. We didn't know, but someone did, and now we're paying the price. Tunde is missing. I don't know if I'll be next. Please, pray for us." The video went viral. News outlets picked it up. Survivor speaks NYSC tragedy tied to stolen royal artifact. Tunde Adeola missing. More questions after tragic bus crash. But the scariest part? Later that week, someone broke into Ebir's compound. She heard the rustling outside her window around 2 a.m., peeped through the curtain. A shadow stood there. Still. Watching. She screamed. Her mother ran in. They called the police. By the time officers arrived, the man was gone. But something was left behind. A piece of red cloth, wrapped around a small wooden carving of a crown. That morning, she collapsed in tears. Everything was spinning out of control. Later that day, she met with one of the king's councilmen, an elderly man named Chief Oladipo. He was calm, dressed in white, his walking stick tapping softly on the tiled floor as he entered the room. "My daughter," he said, "why didn't you all just leave the market empty-handed?" Abir was trembling. "We didn't know, sir. We didn't mean to offend." He nodded slowly. "Intentions don't protect you from consequences. You carried something sacred. The land has memory, and the ancestors don't forget so easily." She wiped her tears and asked the question that had haunted her since the crash. "What can we do? How do we fix this?" Chief Oladipo looked into her eyes. "You must return. All of you who are still alive. You must go back to the land where it was taken. Kneel before the Oba, confess everything, and beg for forgiveness." Ebir's heart skipped. Return to the same village? Where they found the crown? Where the crash happened? Her voice was faint. What if we don't?" The chief looked at her, his face serious, then prepare to bury another. The return journey was nothing like the first. This time, there was no excitement, no laughter, no matching kaki, just silence and fear. Only 6 of them remained. Ebir sat at the front of the small bus, her hands tightly clasped on her lap. Every sound made her flinch. Every bump in the road brought back memories of blood, of screams, of bodies crushed beneath metal. Chioma sat beside her, eyes closed but clearly not sleeping. Ibrahim and 2 others were at the back, heads down, lost in their own quiet storms. The 6th person was the NYSC coordinator, Mr. Salami, who insisted on coming to show solidarity. The village road was rough, filled with potholes, as if even the earth itself was warning them not to come back. When the bus finally pulled into Oduoke, the village where it all began, the sun was already setting. The air was thick. Quiet. Too quiet. No children running around. No traders calling out prices. Just villagers standing outside their homes, watching them, judging. Ibir's chest tightened as they stepped out. The village chief's guards were waiting. They didn't speak, just motioned for them to follow. Ibir's legs trembled with every step, but she walked forward. They all did. The palace gates opened slowly. Inside, the compound was wide, clean, and intimidating. Drums began to beat in the background, low, steady, like a heartbeat. Dum, dum, dum. At the center sat the Oba, majestic, silent. His face was unreadable. He wore the royal beads, his crown shining, not the one Boma stole, but another, taller, older, heavier. They were led to kneel. Abir's knees hit the earth, and her voice quivered. "Your Majesty, we have come to say sorry." The Oba didn't speak immediately. He let the silence stretch, then his voice cut through the air like a blade. You did not respect us. You laughed at our warnings. You took what was not yours. And because of that, the land drank the blood of your brothers and sisters. Chioma burst into quiet sobs. Ibrahim bowed his head completely to the ground. Abier swallowed hard. We didn't know. We didn't understand the weight of what was done, but we are here now to confess, to return what was taken, and to beg for forgiveness. She brought out the red cloth. Wrapped inside was the small wooden carving that had been left at her window, the one tied to the missing crown. It wasn't much, but it was symbolic, a way to return the guilt, the shame, the blood. The Oba looked at his councilman, then back at the kneeling group. There is a place behind this palace, a sacred ground. You must go there, pour water on the earth, and speak the names of your dead. The guards escorted them silently through a narrow footpath until they reached a small clearing under a tall Iroko tree. The air felt heavy, sacred. There was a pot of clean water on the ground. They each took turns. Ebier's hands shook as she poured the water. I speak the name of Boma, she whispered. I speak the name of Sei, of Lami, of Musa, of Tunde. Her voice cracked. And I pray they rest. As the last drop of water hit the soil, the wind suddenly picked up. The Iroko leaves rustled loudly above them. It felt like something shifted. Something lifted. By the time they returned to the palace, the Oba stood up. You may leave, he said. But remember, some mistakes cost lives. May this pain teach you. May you never forget. They bowed deeply. As they walked back to the bus, Ebier turned and looked one last time at the village that had changed everything. She knew she would never return. 2 weeks later, she got a call. It was Tunde. He was alive. Weak, confused, but alive. He'd been found in a bush behind his compound. Unconscious, dehydrated, but breathing. The doctor said it was a miracle. But Ebier knew better. She sat at her window that night, staring up at the stars. She thought about how everything began with one small choice. How one object, one joke, one refusal to pray cost them everything. Now the scars would remain. And every time she entered a vehicle, every time she packed a bag, every time she stepped on a road, she would whisper a prayer. Not out of fear, but out of respect. Because now she understood. This is why you must always pray before traveling. Not because of superstition, but because the road does not owe you mercy. And sometimes it remembers. If this story touched you, please like, share, and subscribe. Let us know in the comments what you would have done if you were on that bus. And remember, always pray before you travel.